In this episode, we speak with Jack Hooper, co-founder and CEO of Take Command Health, a Dallas-based SaaS company that helps employers reimburse employees for health insurance and empowers individuals to find coverage tailored to their needs. Jack spent 6 years as an analyst for the CIA and FBI, helping top officials unravel data to understand risk and opportunity. He twice received an Innovation Award from the director of the FBI and was honored for distinguished service overseas by the director of the CIA. Jack also worked as a strategy consultant at the Boston Consulting Group. Take Command Health is accelerating the adoption of the reimbursement model of health insurance. The company's platform simplifies health reimbursement arrangements, HRAs, helping businesses offer more flexible, cost-effective benefits. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and the managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Great Entrepreneurs, a podcast for driven entrepreneurs and business owners. Our podcast covers all topics related to the entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to execution to optimization and to reaping the rewards of a well-run business. In the minutes ahead, we'll share with you unique insights and tactics from some of today's most accomplished and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Jack, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Thanks, RJ. Excited to be with you too. Thanks for having us.
So you have a super interesting background, and we'll get into it a little bit. I'd like to start out with, for the benefit of our audience, how you came up with the idea for Take Command Health, because you were in a different profession, or maybe you were kind of starting the business simultaneously. You were in management consulting, but maybe tell us about how the idea came about and why you decided to pursue it.
Good question. We always joke around, RJ, a great conversation starter when you meet other healthcare entrepreneurs or folks in healthcare is, how'd you get in healthcare? Because very rarely do you find someone that was their dedicated path. Yet here we are here. So my journey into healthcare started actually with a personal need, a surprise twin pregnancy in graduate school. My wife and I were moving from Texas to Philadelphia to start at Wharton. And somewhere along the way, she was like, I don't feel well. And it's like, oh, okay, hon, you'll be fine. And it turns out she was pregnant. So we found out we were pregnant at some gas station on Highway 40, just how you told your mother-in-law it would be. And then we had to wait a few weeks for the student health insurance to kick in, and then found out it was twins. And while they've been a huge blessing in our life, they were an enormous surprise. And after the dust in my mind settled, it's like, okay, I can budget for diapers and a stroller and a bigger apartment, but what do I pay the hospital for twins? Is it $5,000? Is it $500,000? I was in a funny situation where I had to take out some student loans to cover the cost. And that was the biggest question mark I had, and couldn't fill it in. So my journey into healthcare really was a personal project of trying to figure out what did twins cost. And it happened to coincide, this was about a decade ago, when the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, had been passed, but not yet really rolled out. And it struck me as, okay, there's gonna be a market for health insurance. That's kind of cool. But here I am trying to get basic questions, and I'm getting nowhere. So the first iteration of Take Command really was a TurboTax-like platform where we took all this medical claims data and we'd say, all right, RJ, tell me about your family, any medical needs or conditions, because those are covered now. And we'd run this big simulation or analysis and say, okay, RJ, you need the Blue Cross Bronze plan or the Aetna Gold plan, and here's why. So yeah, that's how I got into the twins. They're 12 now, so that's how I can keep up with my milestones.
And it seems like you may have parallel processed, starting the company, because this problem that you encountered was when you were in the MBA program, but then you went on to work full time. So was there overlap in kind of the genesis of the business, or was there a distinct okay, I'm moving from consulting to startup land?
Good question. So Take Command actually launched out of business school. It was a little side platform, kind of kept the lights on. And I can't say that it went viral or anything like that, but we started noticing increasing numbers of people using it. I think it got shared around on some blogs and things like that. So I thought, oh, hey, there's something here. Meanwhile, because of the twins, they're 1 year old now. And it's like, I just need help. And I'm from Dallas. My wife is from Houston. So I was like, I'm going to take the first job I could get in Dallas or Houston, and it happened to be management consulting with Boston Consulting Group, which I loved. Great experience, learned a lot. But this site kept gaining users in the background. And eventually I looked at it, and I was about a year and a half or 2 years into consulting. And I was like, hey, I think now's the time to make the jump and jump in on Take Command full time. I'll never forget talking with my wife, who's been very supportive. But her first question was, but what are we going to do for health insurance? I really love the one BCG provides. And I'm like, don't worry, hon, I'm starting a health insurance company. And she's like, I don't want that one. I want, the real one. So that was the start and kind of the cutover to jumping into entrepreneurship full time.
There's a lot to consider, especially with young kids, in the picture to taking that leap. Was it an easy decision for you? Like, this is gaining traction. I could see it working out. Everyone tries to mitigate risk to some degree, but how hard was it for you to take that leap?
My experience is, as an entrepreneur, you have to take the leap. You've got to do it. But to your point on risk mitigation, you get to choose if you're jumping off a cliff or like a step ladder. So you've got to leap, at some point you've got to make that decision. But you can work and test out and be patient and figure out, well, how big a leap is it? And for me, as a new father at the time, a provider, doing something that I might have been able to do before, where it's like, I'm just going to quit my job and work for 6 months with no salary and give it a go. It's like, well, that really wasn't an option for me. But I'm so fortunate and frankly blessed with how the timing worked out, where I could work full time at BCG and in the background see that, okay, Take Command was working and gaining some traction. And on the weekends and the holidays, I could have conversations with potential funders, seed investors. And it got to where, yes, did have to take a leap, which for me took a lot of prayer, a lot of discussion with my wife, a lot of thoughtful reflection. But I knew I was jumping into something that had users and was working. I didn't have to like jump in cold. Now, a lot of people, they jump much higher off the cliff, and kudos for them. For me and my story, that really wasn't an option and not in my nature anyway. So I think taking a calculated jump is important.
And at that point, were you already starting to cash flow the business? So there was some salary you could take out of it?
A little bit. So it was not replacing my BCG salary, but my income wasn't at zero either. So I think at the time the business was probably making between $50,000 and $80,000. Again, not going to replace the salary, and that was the whole revenue. So I had to pay for some web hosting and things out of that. But I had a little bit, and I knew I needed just a few months then to work on a fundraising process that I'd already started.
Now, it's interesting to think about building a business in phases. There's that early phase where it's kind of like figuring out product market fit. Then there's, maybe somewhat in parallel, all these overlap, but it's building a team, it's establishing a culture. Sometimes it's also then raising capital. It's catering to your most important clients. It's figuring out a lot of different things. We can go on and on. I'm curious as to what phase of the business building process you're in currently.
Oh, good question. So we're in the scale it up phase. I also call it like the awkward teenage adolescent phase, where in the early days, and to be open, I've loved each phase, but they are distinct and different. In the early days, you're clamoring for any kind of revenue and traction. And as I reflect back on that time, I love the hustle. I love the problem solving, the late nights, the sudden left turns and pivots. It can be really exciting and exhilarating. And then you catch a little bit of traction and then, you lurch forward. And I'm so grateful for some of the partners that joined me in the early days at Take Command. We really had, I call them kind of general athlete ninjas, where it's like, hey, we need a marketing request. Okay, great. All right, we need an operations plan. All right, I'm on it, and, just kind of that quick problem solving and collaboration. Thankfully, we've grown. So we're about 30 million in revenue now. And we support about 7,000 employers on our platform. So our products evolved too. We were doing that individual insurance, Now we help small and medium and increasingly large employers manage these new types of health reimbursement arrangements where instead of picking a group health plan for everyone, they can offer a tax-free contribution. And then we use that same TurboTax engine to help individual employees pick out the plan that's best for them. It's way more efficient and clean. It's kind of like 401k health insurance versus pension plan health insurance. But the reality is you grow, like you need different people. You need people that have operations experience, that have run call centers, that can, on the technology side, help you get SOC 2 compliant, and you have a documented platform and things that in the early days where you're just flying and trying everything out. Okay, now we need processes. Now we need HR procedures. Now we need different things that, again, we never want to get, I'm sure everyone always says this, you never want to become that big bureaucratic company that you're trying to avoid by being in startups anyway. At the same time, it's like, well, yeah, we need some processes for how we handle this. And we need to make sure we're taking care of our current clients as we're building new things. It used to be easy to roll out new features because we didn't have any clients, so it didn't matter if something broke or changed. Now you've got to be really careful of kind of managing that stable infrastructure while continuing to innovate.
In some regards, as we talk about the different phases you move in as you're growing the business, the entrepreneur has to almost evolve faster than the business because you're providing direction to where the business is going to move towards. And the way you spend your day-to-day changes as a result. I'm curious how you divide up your day currently. In the early days, I imagine you were doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're probably more focused in how you spend your time. So curious how you think about the strategy of your time and where you're most focused on helping.
Great question, RJ. And I think for aspiring or growing entrepreneurs, it was a shocking change for me. You go from running 100% kind of working in your business. You're the support manager and the sales guy and the hiring and the firing guy. Like you're really wearing multiple hats. And for a while, I viewed it as, okay, well, my job is just like, as things get busier and as we grow, to like take off a few hats and pass them around. And, candidly, RJ, I had never led a team like this or been a people manager until Take Command. And I think I got good at being a 10-person CEO, and you start to feel confident with that. But now you're 20 people, and then, okay, you stretch and you grow and you make some mistakes. So you got to give yourself some grace, and you get good at being a 20-person CEO, but now you're a 50-person CEO. And it's like, oh my gosh, and I realized okay, I'm passing out all the hats, but I'm still holding on to so much. I still have got too many hands in the business. So I look at my time now, 100% of working on the business. And I can't be the leader to everyone. So Take Command's about 130 full-time employees now. We're just at the point where I can barely remember everyone's name. I have to ask a few times. But my job has just got to be working on the business and investing in my leadership team, which is 6 people. And if I can lean in and make that a highly effective team, then they're going to turn around and make their teams highly effective and so forth, and kind of cascading down into the organization. So I love it, but it was a hard transaction to kind of give up those last hats of, okay, I can't make these decisions about how our product functions or who to hire and stuff like that anymore. I've got to pass that over and trust the individuals that I've hired and put in those positions. The mantra I talk about a lot internally is right people, right seats. My job is just to curate my leadership team and help make sure we've got the right people in the right seats and that the right conversations are happening and that we're making the right strategic decisions. I've got to let go of a lot of the things I was doing early on in the business. That's been a hard transition.
And as we're talking about this, the curation of your leadership team, that's sometimes a very hard thing to accomplish. It's recruiting the right person in. They could have had exceptional experience and, all the credentials, but a lot of times their ability to be effective is contextual. So maybe they were good in another environment, but they may or may not work out in your environment because of the stage you're at, because of the way your organization works internally. There could be a myriad of reasons why maybe this new person coming in may or may not work. I like to ask this question. You can answer it however you like, but what's your hit rate been with hiring the right leadership team?
I think pretty high in retrospect. But looking back, what you said is important. And I did not realize this. I thought, okay, I loved kind of the founding group of partners. None of them are in leadership roles. Very few are still with the company. And I think about our seed round and our Series A, like all of those leaders have turned over. Even our Series B, a lot of that team has turned over. And I've come to really appreciate thinking about the business in different chapters. And as you alluded, and I've heard this before, but now seeing it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's wild. The people that get you from 0 to 1 are very different that get you from 1 to 3 and 3 to 10. And I think a great example is on our marketing team. We've had 3 different marketing leaders. I think each of them has been a success, but the previous 2 all hit like a clear ceiling, and it was time for them to rotate out. Having those conversations is very tough, but what I've tried to set with my team is it's not necessarily a failure. Yes, there are failures, right? If you don't do your job and okay, I've got to let you go. And unfortunately, we've had a few of those instances. But most of the time it's like, hey, I need you to run for this chapter. Help us get from A to B or 2 to 10 or whatever analogy you want to use. And then we're going to reassess if you're the right person for that next chapter. And I think having an open spirit of those conversations has helped take some of the pressure off. It's still hard when you're dealing with people, things, and issues. But then also challenging for me of like, okay, as a CEO, when do I outrun my ability and capabilities, and how I remain humble and open-handed about that while receiving feedback? The best thing I've figured out for me is, all right, I can be CEO as long as I can keep getting the right people in the right seats. And as soon as I don't know what that seat needs to look like or who needs to be there, I think that's when my board's going to be like, Jack, you're over your head. And like, okay, great, I'll go start something else and help with a smooth transition. So I think thinking about in terms of chapters or defined segments has been much more helpful. I was so heartbroken when it didn't work out with some of the first groups. But as we've gone through, you start to see the very distinct needs that you need in each stage of a growing business.
And we've seen good instances of founders remaining the CEO of the company up until the company is in the billions, multi-billion dollars of revenue. So conceivably, you could continue on as a CEO for the foreseeable future. Do you think it's this element of like the growth mindset where it's like you can do it? You may have identified your weaknesses. You may have figured out how to solve those weaknesses or maybe hire someone to complement. Yeah, I'm curious about your view on that. Do you think you have the capacity to continue to stay the CEO?
It takes such a I think that's been a big change for me. In the early days, it's like, I got this. And especially when you're pitching to venture capital firms, there's a bit of like gusto or like confidence you have to have. And I'm grateful for those around me and confidence I do have, but it's changed in the sense of like this kind of humble acknowledgement of like, I don't know how to do this. And if I can invite some help in, to help assess our technology team or to review this hire on the operation side or marketing side. So being humble that say, hey, I would love some help here. And this is where having a board and mentors and a strong leadership team that can speak truth to you to say, Jack, I don't think you understand this, or this is not a good decision. What's ironic is in the early days, it takes so much of that like fire and kind of overconfidence, like get things going. But I think to sustain it, you still got to be confident, right? But it takes a big reassessment and a humility to say, you know what, I actually need help here. Hey, advisors or board, can you help me with this hire, or can you help assess what's going on here? Because I need a better picture and I don't understand. So I think asking for help is really critical as you grow as an entrepreneur.
We're coming up on time. I have 2 final questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who's had a profound influence on you?
I'm going to cheat and say 2. So I've had some great leadership coaches, which I highly recommend as you grow in entrepreneurship. One of them right now is our CFO. a gentleman named Wayne. So he's probably going to listen to this. He's been so helpful in helping me kind of reset and think about the people side. And then my current coach, a woman named Stephanie, who just does such a good job of asking questions and helping me stay focused on what matters, not getting sucked into the business, but continuing to work on the business and work on myself too.
Excellent. Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Oh, great. Yeah, we're super passionate about health insurance. When you ask people how they feel about health insurance, we run these surveys. Feel powerless, out of control, or taken advantage of. It's like, that really stinks for something that we spend so much time, money, and energy on as individuals and as employers. So at Take Command, like our whole mission is, as our cheesy name implies, helping people take command of their health insurance, restoring some personal agency and transparency. And we believe our model of insurance, as I mentioned, kind of the 401k reimbursement model, it sounds like, well, it's kind of the same as a group plan, but it's really fundamentally different because now you're giving individuals, when they control the purse strings, all of a sudden doctors and insurance companies are accountable to them to provide great service and keep them healthy. Versus in the current model, it gets obfuscated. It's passed through the employer and brokers and hospital systems, and costs are just passed on. Everything kind of obfuscated or hidden from the individual. So we're passionate about providing a little bit of a redemptive lens or framework and kind of reestablishing the individual as the core consumer and leader in healthcare versus employers or hospital groups and things like that. We love employers and hospital groups, but we need the focus back on the individual, back on the patient.
Fantastic. Well, Jack, I want to thank you again for taking the time. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, RJ, for having me on.